Coming diabetes, what you'll learn tonight.
Diabetes, what do we do? To conquer diabetes, go for the low glycemic index foods. No mention of diabetes in his writings.
We're going to be looking tonight at diabetes and high blood pressure. Looking at high blood pressure, we'll be looking at
400 years BC, no mention of diabetes in his writings.
In his works from 400 BC, Socrates, the father of medicine, made no mention of diabetes. Thus, diabetes is a relatively contemporary illness. Diabetes is a disease of lifestyle. You're going to learn how to overcome diabetes tonight. You don't have to have diabetes, and if you do, I'm going to show you how to manage your condition tonight. I think the human body is meant to be self-healing, and it will, given the correct circumstances. What do we do to defeat diabetes? Choose foods with a low glycemic index if you want to beat diabetes. It's not simple. Well, it's not difficult at all. I intended to suggest that obtaining a glycemic index is not difficult. Yes, you can look that up on Google.
So diabetes is a fairly modern disease. Diabetes is a lifestyle disease. Newton's third law of motion states that to every action there's an equal and an opposite reaction. Why isn't the pancreas working? That's what we should be asking. As Proverbs 26 verse 2 states, the curse causeless shall not come. There is a reason. There is a reason why pancreases are not working. Now the pancreas's, one of its main roles is to release two hormones. One is insulin, that gets the blood sugar down. The other hormone is glucagon, and that gets the blood sugar level up. Now the meal that you had tonight, because it's high in fibre, I think everything had fibre, generous proteins, there's your legumes and some great fats, it gives a slow, sure, steady release of glucose, of nutrients. And that allows the pancreas to just release the insulin as it's needed. That's what every cell in the body wants, and that's what our pancreas wants. But what's happening today is people predominantly are eating a high carbohydrate diet. And this high carbohydrate diet releases a lot of glucose. And that glucose, when it gets into the blood, especially the refined sugar, and by the way, the refined grains, it's almost as high as sugar. But there is one grain that gets the blood sugar levels higher than refined sugar. Is that a surprise? And the grain that does that is what? Bread and cereal and pasta and cakes, etc., and pizza are all made out of predominantly one grain. What's that one grain? It's wheat. Now in the 1950s, wheat went through intensive crossbreeding. And the reason they put it through intensive crossbreeding is they wanted to create a plant with a high yield of grain, so that would help with the starvation crisis in Africa, in Mexico, in India. And eventually Dr. Norman Bourlag got a Nobel Prize for his hybridized wheat. At first, the stalk broke before the grain was fully ripe, because wheat used to grow that high. Do you remember that? We had a 25-year-old wheat farmer come to our retreat. He'd never heard of such a thing.
What if I told you that the secret to stopping, controlling, and possibly even curing diabetes might be found right now in your kitchen? Reputable naturopath Dr. Barbara O'Neill has discovered unexpected links between nutrition and the control of diabetes. Pharmaceutical corporations would want to keep these things under wraps. We'll look at how just a few easy dietary adjustments might significantly enhance your ability to regulate blood sugar in the next minutes. Pay close attention as we delve into cutting-edge research to find natural therapies that have the potential to completely change the life of a diabetic. The secretion of two hormones is one of the pancreas' primary functions. Insulin is one, which lowers blood sugar. Glucagon is the other hormone that raises blood sugar levels. According to Dr. O'Neill, diabetes is essentially a problem with blood sugar control. However, sugar is not the only issue. A major contributor to the issue is our contemporary lifestyle. We are persistently stressed, we don't get enough exercise, and we consume processed foods heavy in refined carbs on a regular basis. When all of this comes together, diabetes is destined to become severe. Nowadays, the majority of individuals consume diets heavy in carbohydrates. Furthermore, a diet high in carbohydrates releases a lot of glucose. According to Dr. O'Neill, this continuous glucose inflow makes our pancreas work harder and longer, eventually resulting in the production of more and more insulin. Insulin resistance and ultimately type 2 diabetes may result from this. However, the apparent offenders like drink and candies are not the only ones producing issues. This particular grain raises blood sugar levels more than refined sugar. Does that come as a surprise? And what kind of grain accomplishes that? One grain is the main ingredient of bread, cereal, pasta, cakes, and pizza, among other foods. That one grain, what is it? It's made of wheat. You may be shocked by this wheat-related discovery. Whole wheat products are popular among those attempting to eat healthier because they believe they are making a wise decision. But Dr. O'Neill believes that this might be aggravating the situation. Wheat, whole wheat, complete wheat cereal and bread. It is currently at 72. Oh, how is that possible? Obviously, whole wheat contains more amylopectin A because it isn't processed. And the substance that raises blood sugar levels is amylopectin A. Foods are ranked on a scale called the glycemic index, or GI, according to how quickly their blood sugar rises. High GI foods release sugar content quickly, which results in a sharp rise in blood sugar levels. Now, you may be asking yourself, how did we get here since diabetes is such a modern issue?
And she said, and every 6 months I go to the doctor and he puts me on more insulin. She said, I'm not like the lady down the road. She just eats cakes and candies but I don't do that. She said, I'm crying because I've been so frustrated, but I have not known what to do. So why aren't the nutritionists told this? How much wheat does America grow? Acres of it. How much wheat does Australia grow? A lot. So it's big industry. So it's not an easy thing to change. And the farmers love the hybridised wheat. They've got to pay their bills. 10 times more grain per acre, that's 10 times more dollars per acre. So you see the problem. So no wonder diabetes has skyrocketed. It's not just the sugar, it's also the wheat. So to conquer diabetes, what do? To conquer diabetes, go for the low glycemic index foods. It's not easy, it's easy. I meant to say it's not hard to get a glycemic index. You can Google that. It's a matter of having berries for breakfast instead of banana. It's as simple as having sweet potato instead of potato. Having your whole grains, eliminating the wheat. Low GI foods.
What's more, how can we make it right? Big Pharma does not want you to know the startling answers that Dr. O'Neill has to provide. Dr. O'Neill takes a more comprehensive approach to managing diabetes than merely monitoring carbs. For a treatment to be effective, she feels that knowing the disease's underlying causes is essential. Insulin resistance is typically the first symptom of diabetes. There's a term for it, insulin resistance. What transpires when an individual with insulin resistance follows a diet heavy in carbohydrates? Blood glucose levels are rising due to a lot of wheat. Insulin resistance functions as a warning indicator when it comes to your body's inability to properly metabolize glucose. Dr. O'Neill claims that it is the antecedent of type 2 diabetes and that our contemporary diet and lifestyle choices play a major role in its development. Someone screams at this. You see, elevated blood glucose levels cause the pancreas to quickly scream because elevated glucose requires elevated insulin. More insulin, please. As a result, it releases an excessive amount of insulin. The pancreas eventually runs out of insulin due to this continuous demand, which results in decreased insulin production and the onset of diabetes. The good news is here, though. Dr. O'Neill thinks we can manage diabetes and even reverse it if we deal with these underlying causes. Let's now investigate some of Dr. O'Neill's natural methods for curing diabetes. Low GI foods are Dr. O'Neill's initial suggestion for managing diabetes. What do we do to defeat diabetes? Choose foods with a low glycemic index if you want to beat diabetes. It's not simple. Well, it's not difficult at all. I meant to say that obtaining a glycemic index is not difficult. Yes, you can look that up on Google. It's only a matter of replacing the banana with berries for breakfast. It's as easy as substituting sweet potatoes for potatoes. Consuming entire grains and removing wheat. Low GI meals. The significance of selecting foods with a low glycemic index is emphasized by Dr. O'Neill.
But what it produced, and they're starting to realize this only now, what it produced was a type of starch structure that gets the blood sugar level up higher than even sugar. So the starch structure that was created is called amylopectin A. And amylopectin A is the name of the starch that was produced. So let's look at what it does. We'll do it up here. It gets the blood sugar level up very high, very fast. So then you get a corresponding dump. So that's the A. So let me give you something to compare it to. Amylopectin B. Amylopectin B is found in bananas and potatoes. And if you're familiar with the glycemic index of food, bananas and potatoes, they're high on the glycemic index, so they get the blood sugar level up relatively high, relatively fast. Not as high and not as fast, so it's more like that. So that's your B. Amylopectin C is found in all your beans. There's your lentils, chickpeas, lima beans, cannellini beans, kidney beans. So what does the C do? The C gives a lovely steady rise, maintenance, lovely steady drop. That's what every cell in the body wants. So let's have a look at it on the glycemic index. Now the glycemic index is a very important index for diabetics because the glycemic index is an index or a reading on how quickly the glucose in that food is released into the blood. So your baseline is 55. So all your berries sit at about 26. Grapefruit, it sits at 25. So for the diabetic, these are good fruits because they're low GI. They're a lovely, slower delivery of fuel. Whereas bananas, they sit up here somewhere. So where does sugar sit? Sugar sits at 59. Where does white bread, white pasta, white cereal, it sits at 69 because of the amylopectin starch in it. What about whole wheat? Whole wheat bread, whole wheat cereal, it sits at 72. How could that be? Well, because the whole wheat isn't refined, it's got more amylopectin A in it. And it's the amylopectin A that gets the blood sugar level up. Now, absolutely, whole wheat bread is superior to white because it's got fibre, it's got your B vitamins. But in regard to the diabetic, who's watching their blood glucose levels, they need to eliminate wheat. Totally.
These foods avoid the sharp rises and falls in blood sugar that can cause serious damage to your body. Instead, glucose is released into the bloodstream gradually. According to a research that was published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, diabetics who followed a low GI diet experienced better blood sugar regulation and a lower risk of cardiovascular problems. Among the GI foods are 1. Berries. GI ranges from 25 to 30. Legumes, approximately 20 to 30 GI. Dr. O'Mill also discusses how legumes can fight diabetes. He was a scientist. That dude. He was 69. He attended our retreat. He said, "I was told I had prediabetes and to eat legumes every day when I was 42. He said, "I never developed diabetes because I eat legumes every day." Because the beans provide a beautiful constant fuel delivery. Dr. O'Mill's narrative demonstrates the significant influence beans can have on blood sugar regulation. Legumes, which include chickpeas, lentils, and beans, are nutrient-dense superfoods that can lower blood sugar. As a matter of fact, a meta-analysis that was published in the journal Diabetes Care discovered that incorporating beans into a high-fiber diet helped persons with type 2 diabetes achieve considerably better glycemic control. However, what about the pain that some people feel when they eat legumes? Dr. O'Mill also has an answer for it. How can we prevent them from producing wind or bloating? After soaking them for the entire night, you give them a thorough rinse and then bring them to a rolling boil. Have you noticed all the foam that forms? Are you aware of what that is? Wind. You may reap the benefits of legumes' ability to balance blood sugar levels without having to deal with any unpleasant side effects by following these easy preparation instructions. Dr. O'Mill suggests healthy fats as another food type that fights diabetes. Not all fats are detrimental for diabetes, despite what the general public believes. Actually, some fats can aid with blood sugar regulation and insulin sensitivity. And now for the good fats. Earlier in the week, we also examined fats that kill and heal. Your changed fats are the killer fats. There are your deep-fried foods, your margarines, and those modified or transformed fats, or your highly heated polyunsaturated fats that have been removed. These lipids are harmful. Dr. O'Neill emphasizes that particular kinds of processed and modified fats, rather than fat per se, are the issue. She advises concentrating on wholesome fats from entire food sources instead. People with type 2 diabetes showed better insulin sensitivity when following a diet high in monounsaturated fats, according to a study published in Diabetes Care. Avocados, almonds, seeds, olive oil, and fatty seafood like salmon are good sources of good fats. Additionally, Dr. O'Neill has selected a specific variety of wheat to combat diabetes. Recall our discussion regarding wheat's negative effects on blood sugar. Dr. O'Neill, however, has discovered an amazing way to consume grains without experiencing a surge in blood sugar. Ancient grains are still available today. Grain that has not undergone hybridization is available.
Daily legumes. I met a man, he was a scientist, he was 69. He came to our retreat. He said, when I was 42, I was told I had pre-diabetes and to eat legumes every day. He said, I eat legumes every day and I never got diabetes. Because the beans give that lovely, sure, steady delivery of fuel. But how do we stop them causing bloating or wind? You soak them overnight. And then you rinse them very well. And then you bring them to the boil. Have you seen all the froth that comes on? You know what that is? Wind. You got to rinse it away. What I do is when my beans are 3/4 cooked, I rinse them again. And then I put my beans into a delicious sauce. And then you will not have that problem. They'll be a lot easier to digest. When I first married my husband 24 years ago, He could handle lima beans, he could handle red lentils, he could not handle brown lentils, and he could not handle kidney beans. So what I did is at the meal I'd give him a teaspoon. That didn't cause a problem. A few days later, 2 teaspoons. Within a couple of weeks, 3 teaspoons. He can now handle them all. So sometimes if there are some you can't handle and they're even well soaked and rinsed, just start slowly and introduce yourself to them. As we looked at when we looked at the liver, the legumes are only a third the carbohydrate that you will find in your grains.
Some wheat grains can be obtained from the original wheat. The original wheat is actually known in corn as Enkenhorn, or sometimes I just call it inkhorn. Additionally, the Emma grain, a wild hybrid from the original Einkorn. These ancient grains have a considerably lower effect on blood sugar levels than modern wheat because they have not undergone the same genetic alterations. According to a research in the European Journal of Clinical Nutrition, the glycemic index of ancient wheatites, such as Einkorn, was lower than that of modern wheat. For bread aficionados, Dr. O'Neill also suggests an additional choice. Because sourdough is a cultivated bread, it is therefore the best kind. Additionally, the grain becomes pre-digested due to the culturing process breakdown of the gluten or protein. You are consuming a much simpler to digest bread when you eat sourdough bread. It has been demonstrated that the fermentation process used to make sourdough bread lowers the bread's glycemic index, making it a healthier choice for blood sugar control. Exercise is just as important as food in the management of diabetes, according to Dr. O'Neill. However, when it comes to controlling blood sugar, not all forms of exercise are made equal. The connection between diabetes and exercise is quite significant. Furthermore, high-intensity interval training is the most efficient kind of exercise. It has been demonstrated that high-intensity interval training is especially useful for enhancing insulin sensitivity and blood sugar regulation. According to a research in the journal Diabetes Care, heat therapy was a more effective way than continuous moderate-intensity exercise to enhance glycemic control in individuals with type 2 diabetes. Dr. O'Neill elucidates the potency of heat. That kind of exercise is required because it results in a tremendous blood inflow into all of your body's cells, including your pancreas cells. Because the blood contains the vitality of the flesh, as stated in Leviticus 17.11. Your pancreas cells come back to life. More blood, you see, equals more life. More blood contains more water, oxygen, and nutrients, removing garbage from the area. The blood has the ability to heal. This improved blood flow enhances insulin sensitivity throughout the body, in addition to aiding in the revival of pancreatic cells. Dr. O'Neill makes some quite unexpected suggestions for managing diabetes, one of which is to put salt water, and not just any salt water, in our mouths. We are a saline people. Our internal C is what French physician Dr. Lelangre, who published a full book on salt, refers to as it. Because seawater has the exact same mineral balance and proportion as bodily fluids and bones, it is referred to as an isotonic solution. Dr. O'Neill suggests creating a solution that imitates the body's natural mineral balance by utilizing unrefined, mineral-rich salt. She thinks that this method can assist enhance cellular activity in general, which includes the function of the pancreatic cells that produce insulin. You must consume salt in its natural state, found in seawater rich in minerals, as created by God. The good news is that drinking seawater is not required. All of the salts are yours to have.
Number 3, there are some things that must stop. What must stop is wheat. What must stop is refined sugar. Now, if someone's looking at conquering diabetes, initially they also need to eliminate all your healthy sugars, like your palm sugar, your maple syrup and honey. So they need to be stopped until the pancreas is starting to recover. And it can recover. One young man named Dan did our program. He was type 1 diabetes. He got diabetes after a strong course of antibiotics at the age of 15. He's now 19. He said, my specialist said my pancreas is dead. I said, is it gangrene? What's dead? I said, if there is blood going through your pancreas, it's not dead. The life of the flesh is in the blood. So he began to do this. Another thing is no wheat, no caffeine, and no refined sugar and no caffeine. Caffeine can actually get an insulin response, so that has to be stopped. When he came to our retreat, he ate only low glycemic food.
Therefore, salt is present in plenty. Studies have demonstrated effects of unprocessed salt on diabetes. People with type 2 diabetes showed better insulin sensitivity after taking supplements of magnesium, according to a study published in the journal Diabetes Care. Magnesium and other trace minerals can be found in abundance in unrefined sea salt. The last secret shared by Dr. O'Neill includes a plentiful and free resource that many of us do not receive enough of. Thankfully, sun phobia has kept people away from the sun, but the sun exists in the sky for a purpose that God intended. It's possible that you've seen presentations from certain medical professionals who claim that vitamin D deficiency has a role in people becoming unwell. Vitamin D is important for diabetes as well. People with type the value of exposure to daylight.
And what he found was if he felt that he was getting a blood sugar level low between meals, he'd have a little bit of the salt and a glass of water, and it would maintain him. I do not advise diabetics eat every 2 hours because that really disrupts digestion. When we looked at the journey through the gut, did you notice that digestion averages 3.5 to 4 hours? So you've got to leave that break between meals. If you eat food, and this is what Dan did, and we just looked at this, high fibre. Remember what fibre does? It slowly releases the glucose. Generous proteins, there's your legumes, nuts and seeds. They're all low carbohydrates, so you're not overworking the pancreas. And also the healthy fats. We also looked earlier in the week at fats that heal, the fats that kill. And the killer fats are your altered fats. There's your deep fried foods, there's your margarines, those fats that have been changed or altered, or your polyunsaturated fats that have been extracted using high heat. They're the dangerous fats. These are the 3 foods that keep the food in the stomach longer. These are the ones that give that steady, consistent delivery of fuel. Also, what Dan did is he began to exercise, and the exercise he implemented was the high intensity interval training. So he'd put his joggers on every morning and he would run up and down the hills. Now after he was with us for 4 weeks, he did 2 weeks program and 2 weeks in the garden. And he came to me at the end of the 3rd week and he said, I want to tell you something. He said, the first week, if I got a blood sugar level low in the middle of the night, I had some candies in my bag, I'd just take a candy. He said it'd get the blood sugar level up, but he said I'd get a terrible headache. But it got my blood sugar level up. He said the second week, I was feeling a bit guilty that I shouldn't be doing that. So he said, if I got a blood sugar level low in the middle of the night, I'd eat an apple. It takes a long time to eat an apple in the middle of the night, doesn't it? The 3rd week, he did something else. He said the 3rd week, if he got a blood sugar level low, he'd jump on the floor and do 30 push-ups. So what's he doing there? Do you remember in our last presentation looking at the heart, about the stores that we have in the cell? Remember the 20-step pathway that gives us 2 units of energy. There's the 8-step pathway that gives us 36. Of course, that's the oxygen pathway. But remember the little bunch of grapes, the little glycogen stores, already in your muscle cell. So when Dan did 30 push-ups, it caused a release of these glycogen stores that gave him